Two once again. This is Gary Bergman,
And
your
Michael
teacher.
Runion. Oh, sorry for talking over you there, Gary.
Yeah, well, that is Michael Runion. He's the other teacher. Yes.
I'm here.
So, we want to welcome you back to KRJ Talk Radio on the Nevada Republic Network.
Yeah, it's good to be back. It's good to be here on this beautiful Saturday morning.
It ain't that beautiful if you looked up in the sky.
Well, I'm above ground. That makes it beautiful for me.
Yes. But that haze, we've been having smoke since the 12th.
Exactly. The whole valley here is just absolutely blanketed.
And if you look closely through this haze, you can see the chemtrails. In fact, I was out earlier this morning, coming in here to kick the air conditioning up, and I was looking up at the chemtrails, and it was so thick in some of those formations that it was coming down like rain.
Yeah, I saw that.
So you got to pay attention to this stuff. Remember, this is chemical warfare. Global chemical warfare, violation of the Geneva Convention, violation of our laws.
Mm-hmm.
Congress ruled in 2002 it was a chemical warfare. So that's a violation of the Geneva Convention, chemical warfare. So why don't you say something about it? Why don't you look up in the sky and take a look at this stuff? Aren't you concerned? Are you just worried about going back in the house, turn on the air, and turn on your reality shows or your football shows, whatever's going out right now, hockey shows? To me, it's all a waste. I gave that up years ago to spend more time with my kids. And no, it's just like Mike was saying the other week. It's like the old games in Rome, the gladiator games, whatever else they had, killing the Christians. So it's keep your mind off what the reality is. That's all it's about. Yeah, but it's a moneymaker, too.
Oh, absolutely. And going along with the directly sprayed chemtrails, I don't know if anybody's been following it, but they've found that both the chemical foam and the chemical fire retardant, the beautiful red stuff, are highly toxic. And they actually have lawsuits, federal lawsuits right now, from various firefighters that are getting cancers and getting sick from the foam and from the fire retardant.
You know what makes it toxic?
What's that?
They use pig's blood.
Yeah, there you go.
Pig's blood. They use pig's fat for lubricants in steel mills, and I had to completely dress out to weld. Respirators, full clothing, everything else. I could not touch that stuff. And it's very highly contaminant. So that causes that foam and stuff in the red. That's pig stuff. Pig's blood or pig's fat, depending on what they're using it for.
Interesting.
So be aware of that.
Yep, they're dumping tons and tons of that over Southern California right now, right across the mountains from us to try to fight that fire. And it's a great excuse to be dumping stuff than that chemical warfare we've been talking about, because people are going to beg you to drop the stuff on them.
And I don't think the Muslims eat pig.
Neither Muslim nor Jew.
Well, I don't think they'd appreciate being hit with that spray.
No, they would not. They both consider the pig an unclean animal.
So, spread the word. If you got the Jewish and Muslim friends, what's coming down on them? Maybe they'll get up and do something about it. Since the rest of the Christians won't do nothing about it, they sit on their hiney, going to these corporate churches.
Yeah, they're comfortable. As long as they're comfortable, they'll keep doing what they do.
I can't remember it right now, but the other morning I was having thoughts come to me.
Well, don't do that, Gary. You'll hurt yourself.
Yeah, it was about the corporate churches, and how the Lord is really getting fed up with it. You people better get away from these corporate churches. You better start becoming believers. You better wake up to what we're telling you and what the Lord is telling you. You don't follow a history book. See the true word, and the word comes from God. So, with that in mind,
go ahead.
What do you want to say?
Well, I was just going to come in here and
go right
start
ahead.
in here. We got to, at KRJ here, we try to bring you some of the news of the world, some of the stupid things that are happening.
Oh, yeah, a lot of stupid stuff.
If we were here to talk about all the stupid things, this show would never end.
At least we're telling you facts. This is the true news. We're not telling you that false news like Fox and the rest of those guys, CNN, MSNBC, or whatever they got up there.
Exactly. All of those are corporate run. They're
Newsmax.
They're all run. They're arms of the government. They are propaganda machines.
That's right.
Now, so here we go. So we're going to talk first, a little bit here, but do some COVID stuff, and then we're going to break into some real history. So let's talk about distance learning and how well that's working. So teachers are now serving as the state's latest and greatest surveillance in your home. So the Massachusetts Department of Children and Families issued a fact sheet for teachers outlining when they should call Child Protective Services so men with guns can come to your home and take your kids from you. The agency is designed to take your children and put them in foster care, and frankly, they've been found in many cases to be facilitating child trafficking.
Yes, and we will highlight this in another hour down the road regarding a national case where this Native American friend of mine's 3 kids were kidnapped. It took, I think, 5 years to get them back. And what he did in the lawsuit has now changed Child Protective Services. He found out a lot of child trafficking and corruption going on, even illegal adoptions.
Yep, exactly. So here's some of the things that are on that list. Your kid misses an online class? Hang on, that's a call to Child Protective Services because it's evidence of neglect.
Truancy, too, as they're calling it.
Oh, absolutely. The teachers are encouraged to pry into your home life on camera. There's a good case there out of, I don't remember what state it was, but teacher saw a child's prized BB gun hanging on his wall.
Ooh, I haven't heard about that one.
And they called the police, actually, because it's illegal to have a weapon in school. Because the school is now your home, and they are extending the laws to there.
Well, you know,
they went and seized the entire family's worth of guns, and they aren't giving them back.
now, if they're calling that room or part of that house the school, then lawfully they have to carry insurance for that child during the time he's on that computer doing his online classroom.
Well, not only that, you know, as far as the corporate citizen, why are you paying property taxes? These high property taxes that you pay to support the school system. They should be paying you rent.
That's right.
They're using your space.
That's right. You should be billing them for this.
You know, the teacher hears too much noise in the house. Well, what's happening in your house today? I saw a person walk by your screen. Who's at home with you today? I haven't seen a person walk by your screen. Are you home alone? Yeah, that's what you're facing with this new norm, this new normal of in-home schooling, of distance learning, of letting these surveillance cameras, and that's what they are, sit in your house and have an agent of the government watch your child in your house all day long while you pay them.
That's just like, why are they still supplying breakfast and lunches to these students when they're home? That don't make sense.
Of course it makes sense. They got to feed them the nutritious gruel that they have to eat to make sure their minds are,
hot dogs,
you know, chock full of chemicals and hormones and antibiotics and who the heck else knows what. Thank you, Michelle Obama, for your school lunches program.
Michael Obama.
Well, yes.
Let's state the facts.
So yeah, that's what you're inviting into your house right now.
So get ready for Comrade Contact Tracer. The governor of New Hampshire, whose state motto is live free or die.
So I guess the answer in this one is die then, huh, Gary?
Yes, that would be. So signed an executive order which forces anyone who tests positive for COVID-19 to comply with orders of the Department of Public Health. Now remember, these executive orders in these corporate states only apply to 14th Amendment corporate citizens.
Well, I would actually take it one step further there, Gary. Executive orders only apply to the executive branch.
That's right.
Unless you're property of the... Oh, hang on. You are property of the executive branch. You're a slave to the government.
Yeah, because they got you because you're using their driver's license. But they didn't bother to tell you it was a contract, so that's null and void. Full disclosure was not there. But technically, it belongs to the corporate employees of the state.
Correct.
So that's who all that executive order belongs to.
So failure to comply with the Department of Health instructions after notification of a positive COVID-19 test, one of those fake tests that you can get positive for not even taking the test,
That's right.
shall result in a fine of $1,000. Now, you're already out of work. You've already lost your job. You're not getting your unemployment because they can't figure that out. But hang on, you're going to get fined $1,000. For instance, if a health department official demands your family separate when one person tests positive for COVID, and every day you resist that separation, every day you fight back to keep your children, you're fined $1,000. The order also says the Department of Health can enter and search private property without a warrant.
Now, that's not right.
In the name of public health.
Can't do that.
And it also applies to businesses. And going one step further, I don't recall the state, please go and look this up if you don't believe me. A young man is now in prison because he hugged his mother. That's right, he hugged his mom, who was tested positive, and they put him in prison. Now, think about that for a minute. If this was all about public health, if this was about public safety, if this was about saving lives, the best way of taking care of this is certainly not to take this young man who just was exposed to this highly deadly, 0.001% deadly, disease, and put him in a place where he's going to spread it to thousands of other inmates.
I mean, this is terrible. What happened to our rights?
Well, what happened to common frickin' sense, Gary?
That's right. That's right.
You know, if me, and I'm not even a poor country doctor, can figure this out. Certainly the best and brightest, which we've put in government, best and brightest, that we have leading us, these best people, the top men, can figure it out too. So you got to ask yourself, why haven't they? What's in it for them? Who's leading them? Who are they getting a kickback from?
Now, all evidence is out there. It is Dr. Fauci, who's heading the CDC, and his cohort are all part of a fraud. That they've made millions of dollars off the illegal patents they've done and this illegal COVID thing. They're the ones that send it over to China because they was about ready to get caught for violating the Geneva Convention doing biological warfare in this country. So they shipped it to China, outsourced it.
Well, heck, isn't everything outsourced to China these days, Gary?
Yeah, but they denied it. That's what I'm saying. But they've got caught red-handed. All the documentation's out there. Everything's out there.
So we'll get one step crazier here. The state of Wisconsin, the Department of Natural Resources, has sent a mandate out to their employees. When you're sitting at home on a telecall, when you're self-isolating, you need to be wearing a mask because you're in a meeting. Get that for a minute. You're on a telecall thousands of miles away from anyone else, by yourself in your own home. But hang on, you've got to wear a mask, even if no one else is present. It's not about spreading and this 0.001% lethal disease. It's about submission.
That's right.
Conformance is a good word, but I think submission fits it better.
Yes.
They want you to submit to them. They want to take away your freedom of choice, your free will, that self-ownership we talked about on the 7th Amendment Hour.
And you better read your Constitution and see where it says who can sign a court order for an arrest warrant.
Exactly.
It sure ain't the Department of Public Health or Natural Resources.
No, it is not. It shall only be on presentment or indictment of a grand jury. And who is the grand jury? That's right, Mr.
Hopefully
and Mrs. America.
Guys. Yeah.
That's you. So, that's where we are on the news of the world. And it's all bad. I wish there was some good news.
It's time to wake up, people. We've been telling you, get your head out of the sand in this fine Nye County sand.
Exactly.
It's choking you off.
Now, if you're looking for good news, catch Dwight Lily's show, Good News for Troubling Times. That's got good news on it.
Yeah, you got to wave it with,
You got to take it with a grain of salt. Just
That's
like
right.
our show, fact check everything you're dealing with.
Just don't rely on Facebook or Google to fact check for you.
Exactly. But yeah, that show is good news for troubling times. That's what it's called. So, it's another here on the...
KRJ.
On 98.1. So here we are on KRJ. We're going to talk about some common law and fact. And we the present government is nothing more than a corporation based in Edinburgh, Scotland, ruled over by the present monarch of England. And we're going to talk today about that present house of Saxburg, Coburn, and Gotha, commonly known as Windsor, because they needed propaganda in the First World War that they were different from their cousin. They're not legitimate monarchs of England, Wales, and Scotland. This house is the descendants of traitors. Now, Gary's going to present the other side of this. I'm going to present this side of it. So we have a little...
You're going to present the bloodline.
Exactly.
Side, and
the
I'm
bloodline.
going to present the so-called constitutional side.
Exactly.
Okay.
So the house, the descendants of traitors and criminals, have usurped the throne for their own gain. both politically and monetarily. Remember, the current Queen, and I put that in quotes, is the richest person in England and Canada and New Zealand.
Second next to the Vatican.
Right, second next to the Vatican. And we see the present accusation the princes of this house are deeply involved in the rape of children. And some would call it prostitution of teens. But a teen can't consent, even under the best conditions. And in the conditions described, they have no freedom whatsoever. These pretenders have used their position in English politics to cover up over and over mass-scale child rape. We saw this in the BBC in the Crown-ordered hit of Liz McKean, when she began to expose the mass pedophilia and child slavery at the BBC. They murdered her outright on her doorstep. And I'm going to warn y'all, this may get a little dry. It's history. Interesting stuff if you really want to dig into the corruption of the political system. So the true king across the water, and I invite Gary to interject anytime he wants to here, but I'm just going to ramble, has never had any kind of the scandals crop up around him, as he is the right and true king with the morals to support his people. And I speak of His Majesty King Francis II of England, Scotland, Wales, France, and Ireland, commonly known as Franz Herzog von Baron. He's a German guy. Bavarian, actually. Now, to our most loyal listeners, going to ask, who the heck is this guy? I've never heard of this guy. That's by design. The government media complex certainly want to bring the truth to you, now would they? So we put forward with a man who's a Knight of Malta, who's never had a scandal attached to his name. Now, the media does not celebrate the good and the right. They put forth the pretenders, who are spoon-fed with what Meghan is wearing today. And Charles and his horse, Camilla, are doing these days.
That's a good one.
So dang you, Charles, and the horse you rode in on. Oh, hi there, Camilla. And they put the martyr, Diana, on a pedestal for you. Let's dig a little deeper and trace the claim of the right and true King of Thrones.
Let's get a little deeper into this.
It all starts in 1688, under His Majesty King James II of England and the 7th of Scotland. Now, why two numbers, you may ask? The fact that the right king, the true king, was king of both England and Scotland. So James is the second James for England and the 7th James for Scotland. Now, Parliament at the time raised an army to depose the king. And one of the reasons, and Gary's going to dig into this a little more, is religious tolerance. The Parliament was scared that James, a Catholic, was going to turn the whole nation Catholic and ought to pass laws that would prevent this. Now, James wanted to push through the religious tolerance of Catholics.
Which mean more influenced by the Pope.
Oh, absolutely would mean more influenced by the Pope.
Parliament didn't have much of a say with the Pope being around.
No, true. But the laws that existed, were a little bit tyrannical when it came to the Catholic population of Ireland. So, due to this, James was forced to flee to France, Catholic France, to protect him. Now, Parliament at this time didn't have a legal means of dealing with these issues, so they turned to murder. Parliament declared James had abdicated in absentia. Again, to abdicate, you really need to actually do it, not just, have someone else say you abdicated. Do it lawfully. At the time, there was no provision in English law, and James continued his claim to the crown until his death in 1885. His title and lands passed on to Charles II. Now, some scholars will point out the Magna Carta to justify these acts by Parliament. Now, the interpretation of Magna Carta that allows for disposal of kings only came to light in the early 18th century, which is after this. Magna Carta had lapsed when the monarchy ceased to exist under temporary order of the usurpation of Cromwell.
What year was that, 1252?
Cromwell?
No.
Magna Carta, 1252, yes.
Okay.
It definitely predates this. Magna Carta was enforceable. But the problem you run into is Cromwell, as Lord Protector in 1653 until his death in 1658, September, basically wiped out Magna Carta because it only applied to the Kingdom of England, and it ceased to exist under Cromwell. To be enforceable under the new king, there would have had to have been some new contract between king and parliament. And there wasn't. Now, I'm not saying Magna Carta was not a great thing. Magna Carta is a huge step forward for the rights of man. The problem happens is when a government ceases to exist, ceases to lawfully exist as it did under Cromwell, I don't think that the laws and the treaties signed by that government carry forth into a new government that follows it. A lot like how we talk about the Lincoln administration and all the unlawful laws we have now. So Cromwell is a lot like that, a lot like Lincoln, where he, dissolved, the government was dissolved when he beheaded Charles. So, back to our story. So here we're left with Bonnie Prince Charlie, king across the water, and he vehemently held to the fact that he was the true king. He made several attempts to reclaim the crown and justify his rule. Sadly, these attempts ended in disaster at Culloden Moor in 1746. The illegitimate crown set about murdering and despoiling every supporter that backed Charlie. These people were stuck in a really bad place. Do you follow your right and true king, or do you follow the illegitimate king? Well, if I follow the illegitimate king and Charlie wins, I'm screwed. If I follow the illegitimate king, or then Charlie and the illegitimate king wins, I'm also screwed. So, what followed were the Highland clearances, were plans that have been in place for hundreds of thousands of years, They're stripped of land, stripped of title, stripped of property. And, of course, we end up with the oppression of the Irish people. Back to Charlie. So Charlie went back to France, and his crown passed upon his death to Henry Benedict Stuart, Henry the Ninth and First. And this is where things get a little complicated. Henry was a cardinal, so he had no children. So it passes from him to Charles Emmanuel the Fourth from Sardinia. This would be Charlie the Fourth. He is a senior surviving descendant of Henry, Cardinal of York's great aunt Henrietta of Orleans, who was the youngest sister of James II. Henry died childless, and no other legitimate descendant has survived. So as Henry's death, no surviving siblings or legitimate descendants existed except for the descendants of Henrietta. So laid down in the common law of England in the succession, the crown passes to Charles. From Charles we move to Victor Emmanuel I of Sardinia, Victor I, the eldest brother of his predecessor Charles Emmanuel, who had died childless. We have a lot of this happening, dying childless, and that's probably the fact of inbreeding. But we'll talk about that later.
Yeah, the royal families, yeah.
Ooh, for the royal family tree, tree. Then we move on to our first queen in the line, Maria Beatrice of Savoy, the eldest surviving daughter of her predecessor, Victor Emmanuel, who had no surviving sons. From Maria to Francis V, Duke of Modena, the eldest son of his predecessor, Mary Beatrice. Then to Maria Theresa of Austria, the niece of her predecessor, who died again childless. Like I said, all these royal families died childless. She was the only child of Francis' only brother Ferdinand, who had predeceased Francis. From there, on to modern times, taking the throne in 1919, Ruprecht, Crown Prince of Bavaria. He followed by Albrecht, his son, the Duke of Bavaria, because the monarchy in Bavaria had been dissolved. Finally, in 1996, Franz, Duke of Bavaria, Francis II ascends the throne, and Francis also holds the title of Duke of Bavaria, Knight of the Grand Cross with collar, Order of the Holy Sepulchre, Protector Bailiff Knight, Grand Cross of Obedience of the Sovereign Military. So he's a member of the Knights of Malta, which are a completely sovereign organization. Order of Malta, First Class Knight, Grand Cross, Order of Merit. Grand Cross, Order of Merit of Romania, and Knight of the Golden Fleece. Now, we know this would all make him ineligible for any office in the several states united under the true 13th Amendment, because he bears titles. The other title this man bears is a tattoo on his right forearm. Tattoo is just simply a string of very sloppy numbers, because he spent time in Dachau, German death camp. Well, what does this mean? Well, it's a great history lesson too. It illustrates the corruption and disobedience to the law of the current House of Saxburg, Kronberg, and Gotha. Now, and this is all going to relate back to common law. It's been going on for centuries. We see the evil fruits now on the throne of England. It's protecting pedophiles and actively participating in human trafficking. And we saw this fruits in George William Frederick, illegitimate George III, and his oppression of the North American colonies and the North American First Nations. We saw this in Alexandra Victoria in her handling of the Irish famine. I'm going to pause here. It's important to me to thank the Choctaw Nation for the support of the Irish people.
And what happens every St. Patrick's Day?
Oh, absolutely. It's celebrated there amongst the native peoples.
Well, the invited honored guest is the principal chief of the Choctaws.
Absolutely.
Their wives, the principal chief and assistant principal chief, and their wives are invited to Dublin to be honored.
Absolutely. The Choctaw people sent $170, back when the currency was actually gold, to help the Irish. Now, the reason why that 170 doesn't sound like a lot. You got to remember, this happened almost immediately after the tyrant Jackson had put these people and hundreds, thousands, tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of Native Americans to march on the Trail of Tears, the Death March, the genocide. And I'll call it what it is. Genocide.
Cherokees.
Chickasaw. Seminoles.
Muskogee. Yes.
So even though you had just been completely despoiled by the tyrant Jackson, you sent $170. It's all you could afford. It's all you could send. But it's much appreciated. As a descendant of one of those people who benefited from it, it's much appreciated. Also, the Ottoman Empire. Now, I will point out that the Ottoman Empire did commit genocide of its own in Armenia. But they sent over 10,000 pounds to the Irish, only to have Alexandra Victoria threaten war on the Ottoman Empire if they sent more than 1,000 pounds, because she didn't want to be embarrassed, because she would only pledge 1,000 for her own people. She didn't want more coming from a foreign power. We saw this in the evils of George Frederick Ernest in the family squabble of World War I, where he personally led millions to their deaths in his ruthless oppression of the Irish, his denial of their basic human rights, because they refused slavery. They refused to be drafted into the English army to go fight overseas. We see this in the true evil of the house and its issue. Everything here comes back to history, folks. But the people do not learn this history, are doomed to repeat it, the mistakes of the past, out of ignorance. We the people have continually had the wool pulled over our eyes. We've been hoodwinked by the power hungry, run amok, bamboozled. And I borrow that from Malcolm X because freedom by any means necessary. Now, I want to put a little postscript on this. I'm a little biased. Clan Duncan, Clan Donaghy, who stood with Charlie, who stood with Robert the Bruce, with James. And the clans were despoiled. They were stripped of their titles and lands and the illegitimate rule that followed. And I also claim heritage from Clan Kennedy in Ireland, driven out in 1918 after the Rising and Civil War that followed. And I'll proudly wear my tartan of my forefathers and honor the Kennedys with my kilt pin. I sign off every week. Chucky our law. Our day will come. And any student of Irish history will know that's the motto of the Irish rebels to this day. So I'll turn it over to my partner here, Gary Bergman, to run through some of the other half of this, the other side, going from the Glorious Revolution.
Well, thank you for that very emotional bit of history. I mean, that's pretty interesting. Because I like that history.
Oh, absolutely. We need to learn our roots. Without our roots, any small breeze will blow us over. The wind of change will blow you right over.
Yeah. The only thing his sister I know is on the Mainburg side, which is the French, but we came out of Belgium, and we were knighted by King Louis XIV and one of my distant uncles for a medical discovery.
Oh, very good.
But that's about as far as I go in Europe, European. About now, my wife, who's from Germany, Vesla, the Hessian Republic. She got a pretty good line history there. But now to add the victor's opinion to this revolution of 1688 to 1689, and how it ties common law into America's way of thinking.
Exactly, because the dynasty at that point was the one that spawned George III. So we're dealing with the group that founded, that colonized America, that had the 13 colonies, that had the Commonwealth of Canada, Commonwealth of Australia, Commonwealth of New Zealand, South Africa. Where else is in the Commonwealth still?
Well, you got Australia and New Zealand, all
Right.
Commonwealth.
Yep, the various island possessions, etc.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
just this is your history now.
So, this revolution of 1688, also called the Glorious Revolution, which was years later they came up with that title, and the Bloodless Revolution. Now, bloodless, they're only saying that only a few Englishmen were killed, but scores of Scottish and Irish were killed during this revolution. I remember reading about the Protestant armies of England just bombarding complete Catholic towns, destroying them, wiping them out. So it was pretty ruthless.
Well, the English have had a long history of using long-range guns to kill innocent people.
Yes.
You know, I'm looking at you guys in the Easter Rising using the artillery on the Irish.
So both political and religious motives sparked the revolution. Many Protestants of England were distrustful of the Catholic king and disapproved of the monarchy's outright power.
And rightly they should. You know, you should be distrustful of anything tied to the Vatican.
But look how many times the English people overthrew their own kings to replace with another king because of the bloodline, different bloodlines. So in 1687, King James II issued a declaration of indulgence, which suspended the penal laws against Catholics and granted acceptance of some Protestant dissenters. I see, we got a law against the Catholics. So this is the deal. We shouldn't have had these laws against different religious people. We should have been able to live in freedom.
Absolutely, of course not. And the Protestant dissenters he's talking about are the Lutherans and the Calvinists, primarily because the accepted Protestant religion of England is Anglican, the Church of England, that official, sanctioned, established church.
And we can go back to the Catholic Church, how they burned people at the stake just because they didn't believe in their religious. The Lutherans, the Jews, I mean, they were terrible at burning people.
Oh, absolutely. No one could deny I don't know, how would you call it, a genocide?
Genocide.
You know, a
Of
genocide.
non-Catholics.
Yeah, exactly. The Inquisition itself.
That's right.
You know, none of these, no religion, no organized religion is blameless. None of them don't have blood on their hands.
So later that year, the king formally dissolved his parliament. Now, it's talking about dissolving a parliament. They just did that the other day up in Canada.
Absolutely.
So they're under dictatorship and attempted to create a new parliament that would support him unconditionally.
And which was his prerogative under Magna Carta.
Yeah,
If I recall, as long as he dissolves it and reestablishes it, he's not a tyrant.
that's kind of like what Lincoln did.
Well, yes and no. The king can, under Magna Carta, can dismiss Parliament at any time, as long as he sets a date for reconvene.
Well, yeah, but I'm referring to Lincoln dissolved the Congress.
Yes.
It came back, a legislative Congress. It came back with an executive corporate Congress.
Right, because he could not form a quorum at that point.
That's right. He couldn't even have a lawful government. So James' daughter Mary, a Protestant, was the rightful heir to the throne until 1688 when James had a son, James Francis Edward Stuart, whom he announced would be raised Catholic. The birth of James' son changed the line of succession, and many feared a Catholic dynasty in England was imminent. The Whigs, the main group that opposed Catholic succession, were especially outraged.
And rightly so. Anytime you have a religious-dominated, dynasty ruling a nation, it's dangerous.
So here we got the king's elevation of Catholicism, his close relationship with France, his conflict with the Parliament, and uncertainty over whom would succeed James on the English throne led to the whispers of revolt and ultimately the fall of James II. Now, William of Orange, in 1688, 7 of King James's peers wrote to the Dutch Protestant prince, William of Orange, the husband of King James's daughter, Mary, pledging their allegiance to the prince and princess if they invaded England. The two leaders formed a joint monarchy and agreed to give Parliament more rights and power. Now, this shows you how all the royal families, even over to Russia, were all connected.
Oh, exactly. You know, it's all, like I said, World War I was a family squabble because you had the illegitimate Edward on the throne of England, you had Kaiser Wilhelm, his cousin, you had Tsar Nicholas, his other cousin, you had, 4 or 5 other, these are all children of the illegitimate Queen Victoria.
Then the Russian-Japanese War, before the First World War, Britain sent military advisors, naval advisors, to train the Japanese to defeat the Russians, who the Tsars was a cousin of the king and queen, the royal family. So they were family fighting family. Even nothing but family wars.
You know, frankly, it would have been better off for humanity if they just broke out the boxing gloves, hit in the ring, and had a little sparring match and figure out who was the toughest that way, instead of sending millions to go die on their behalf.
That's right.
But then again,
the bankers are
that's the banks.
So the two leaders, they formed a joint monarchy and agreed to give Parliament more rights and power. The part of this settlement included signing the English Bill of Rights, which is formally known as an act declaring the rights and liberties of the subject and settling the succession of the crown. So this is where common law comes in, because they signed the Bill of Rights, the king and queen. Among its many provisions, the Bill of Rights condemned King James II for abusing his power and declared that the monarchy could not rule without the consent of Parliament. So what's in the English Bill of Rights? Within the Bill of Rights, the regent's power was defined, written down, and limited for the first time. Parliament's function and influence changed dramatically in the years following the Revolution. The English Bill of Rights includes the following items. Now, you should listen to this, because you need to know the English Bill of Rights.
Right, because it theoretically would still apply, because the founding of the English colonies comes from this. We draw our Bill of Rights from this.
And you'll see how it's all tied in later down the line here. So a list of King James' misdeeds, 13 articles that outline specific freedoms, confirmation that William and Mary were rightful successors to the throne of England. In general, the English Bill of Rights limited the power of the monarchy, elevated the status of Parliament, and outlined specific rights of individuals. Some of the key liberties and concepts laid out in the articles include freedom to elect members of Parliament without the king or queen's interference, freedom of speech in Parliament, freedom from royal interference with the law, freedom to petition the king, freedom to bear arms for self-defense. You got that? Freedom to bear arms for self-defense. Comes from the English Bill of Rights.
Yeah, certainly don't have that in England now.
Freedom from cruel and unusual punishment and excessive bail. That's your 8th Amendment. That comes in the English Bill of Rights. Freedom from taxation by royal prerogative without the agreement of Parliament. Now, we could use that right now. Freedom of fines and forfeitures without a trial. Freedom from armies being raised during peace times. Well, we have a provision in our Constitution that we don't have standing army. We only have Navy and Marine Corps.
Exactly.
But because they like to declare war or national emergency all the time, we have a full-time army.
And you can see how a lot of these are mimicked. They're brought through under the Articles of Confederation and the American Bill of Rights. These aren't bad ideas. They're great ideas. They're self-evident ideas. They're enumerations of your natural rights under natural rights.
Now, here's the other, I thought this kind of discriminatory here. Other important provisions was that Roman Catholics couldn't be king or queen. Parliament should be summoned frequently, and the succession of the throne would be passed to Mary's sister, Princess Anne of Denmark, and her heirs. Now, that should be by their quality, their competency, not by their religion.
Exactly. We can see here how desperate the Parliament was to avoid a Catholic monarchy, and how desperate they were to keep the heirs of James off the throne.
Now, this next one is something we could be using in our Bill of Rights, or our Constitution right now. In fact, we could enact this deal. And the English Bill of Rights was quickly followed by the 1689 Mutiny Act, which limited the maintenance of a standing army during peacetime to 1 year.
Heck, that would definitely fix a lot of
I
problems.
think we could incorporate that, and you'll know why in a minute. In 1701, the English Bill of Rights was supplemented by England's Act of Settlement, which was essentially designed to further ensure Protestant succession to the throne. Now we're going to go to the English Bill of Rights. I mean, the U.S. Bill of Rights, excuse me. The American Bill of Rights. The English Bill of Rights encouraged a form of government where the rights and liberties of individuals were protected. These ideas and philosophies penetrated into the colonies of North America. Now we're talking about Canada too, because they do they got stuff similar to ours.
Not only there, you have Australia, New Zealand, South Africa, etc., etc.
But the fact is, in our Constitution, Canada has always been allowed to join our Confederation. So I treat them as equal.
Absolutely. By free association, they were able to join.
So many of the themes and philosophies found in the English Bill of Rights served as the inspiration for principles that were eventually included in the unanimous Declaration of the 13
States united within a Confederation of America.
Where did we go to?
It's at the very top there,
Oh,
Gary.
that's why I don't see it.
Sorry, it's right there.
Oh, okay. All right. And when he jumps like that, it just throws me off. So the Articles of Confederation, the United States Constitution, and of course, the United States Bill of Rights. The 1791 United States Bill of Rights guarantees freedom of speech. Now, when I said united, it's united with a small u. First Amendment, trial by jury, Seventh Amendment, and protection from cruel and unusual punishment, the Eighth Amendment.
Exactly. These are all mimicked straight from the English Bill of Rights, except they apply to the people and not just Parliament.
That's right. So the legacy of the English Bill of Rights. The English Bill of Rights has had a long-lasting impact on the role of government in England. It has also influenced laws, documents, and ideologies in North America, Australia, Ireland, New Zealand, and other East India trading company colonies, members of the Commonwealth. The Act limited the power of the monarchy, but it also boosted the rights and liberties of individual citizens. Without the English Bill of Rights, the role of the monarchy might be much different than it is today. Check your state constitution or statute codes for the common law in England. In the corporate state of Nevada, it is NRS 1.030. Just go to your search machine and put it NRS 1.030.
I would actually go one step further. Instead of just putting it in the search machine, go get an actual copy. Get a book.
Oh.
Actual hard copy book, the NRS. Those are important things.
Oh, you can always download it too.
You could. The only problem that I have with downloading is it's very easy to change that. It's very much harder to change something in type.
They sell the book you'll need on Amazon.
Absolutely.
So, British statutes and American jurisdictions. John Adams is credited with the statement that he would not have taken the stand that he did in the War of Independence if such action had involved the loss of the common law.
Absolutely. And I just want to interject history here. Adams was a very principled man. Very principled. He was wrong in a lot of cases, but he was very principled. He stuck by them. One of the best stories about Adams that I can recall is immediately after the Boston Massacre, the illegal use of force by British troops against protesters. They were ready to string up. They were ready to execute these soldiers that had opened fire.
Mm-hmm.
Adams demanded a proper trial. And not only, he said, I didn't believe it. He didn't like him. He was for independence. But he said they had to have counsel, benefit of counsel. And he served as counsel for a great many of those soldiers.
Yeah,
and the soldiers that he served as counsel for were found not liable.
And they thanked him for what he did.
Absolutely. Very principled man. Wrong in many cases, but very principled.
And he's the father of the civil flag, as you see. If it wasn't for him, we'd all be in a military dictatorship. Well, we are now. But he tried to prevent that. He didn't want the military ruling over the civil government, which we have now. That's why he incorporated the civil constitutional flag. So, we embodied in the Bill of Rights in our Constitution the principles of the British Constitution as they have been established at the common law. At the threshold of the Revolution, the American Continental Congress of 1774 adopted this resolution. Resolved NCD 5. that the respective colonies are entitled to the common law of England, and more especially to the great and inestimable. Did I didn't say it right?
Yeah,
did I?
you did. You're
Oh, I
right
did?
on it.
Privilege of being tried by their peers of the, what do you say that? Vicinage?
Exactly. Their district or county.
That's Catholic, ain't it, Latin? According to the course of that law. All right, the courts of Nevada Corporation have decided that a statutory recognition of the common law of England includes the English or British statutes and improvement thereof, which was passed prior to the Declaration of Independence and the statute of 32 Henry the Eighth, which was 1542, permitting grantees of revisions and their privies in a state to take advantage of breaches of condition is enforced. The statute of 10 plus 11 William III, Chapter 17, which was written in 1699, declaring that all lotteries, now here's what they're doing, all lotteries to be nuisance and has been held part of the common law of Nevada. Now you know why we don't have lotteries.
You also know why the city of Primm in California, or not Primm, gosh, what is it? Biggest store, yeah, it is Primm. The largest California lottery store sits in Primm.
Oh.
Because all of the, why I know that I've got no clue.
Yeah, but they're on the California side.
They're on the California side of Primm. And that's why the largest, because a lot of Nevadans, we can't get enough gambling, we'll go over there and buy lottery tickets.
So remember, the statute of 10 plus 11, William III, Chapter 17, written in 1699, declaring all lotteries to be nuisance, has been held part of the common law of Nevada. That's why we don't have lotteries.
Exactly. We have everything else, but not lotteries.
So the Arizona courts construed that the common law of England to include English statutes, such as the statute of 13 Edward I, Chapter 34 of 1285, providing that adultery accompanied by elopement and uncondoned by the husband operates to be the bar or right of dower. While no specific limitation as to the date of the accepted acts of Parliament appears to be laid down in Arizona, the courts have indicated that they will recognize the rules of such English statutes as generally enforced in American states, either as part of the common law or as statutory enactments, and general trend seems towards a position that a mandatory British statute enacted prior to the Declaration of Independence form part of the common law of Arizona. Now, something I didn't include in here, it just dawned on me, was that the Dene Nation, the Navajos, they think they incorporate 4 states, but anyway, they follow the common law. That is the law of the Navajo Nation, common law. So,
well, we can always look back and find that common law is the natural law of man.
Yeah, and they picked, the Navajos picked it because it's the closest law to their beliefs. So the state of California is another jurisdiction which interprets the phrase common law of England as including some modificatory statutes. In accordance with this view, the Supreme Court of California, in the case of Martin versus Superior Court, recognized the doctrine of the statute of 2 Henry VIII, Chapter 12, 1519, and acted to help and speed poor persons in their suits. Now, Arkansas also did a case regarding English common law in their Supreme Court, and made a ruling too of a case that went back to one of the king's cases back to 1600s.
Exactly. So, also Hawaii being a former colony, an illegal colony of England. The common law of England is ascertained by English and American decisions, declared to be the common law of Hawaii.
That was done in 1892.
Exactly. And I thoroughly urge the people of Hawaii to, reclaim your birthright and reform the Kingdom of Hawaii.
Well, they got the Supreme Court ruling. They've already got the Kingdom of Hawaii.
Well, they've got the de jure kingdom, but the de facto ruling of Hawaii is...
Yeah, and they're trying to stop that, yes. Well, when we invaded that kingdom, every island was, you might say, a guardianship of a European nation over that island, but they did not interfere when the American corporation used American Navy and Marines to take over throw out the Queen.
Now, I want to point this out to folks. When you go shopping in your store, you see the name Dole, Not Bob Dole. Bob Dole was not involved in this, Bob Dole.
He's not bobbing.
But the Dole Corporation. When you buy them, you're supporting the illegal occupation of Hawaii. They are the company that basically pushed the illegitimate American forces into Hawaii to protect their pineapple plantations.
Now, that's funny. You know, the Supreme Court ruled that what was done to Hawaii was unlawful, and they need to be returned to return their kingdom. But they haven't done it yet. So what's the problem here?
Well, the problem is the fact that pineapple is expensive.
Big money. So Oregon is another jurisdiction which interprets common law as including British statutes. That system was introduced by popular vote on July 26, 1845 by Section 2, Article 1 of the Organic Law, the Provisional Government of Oregon. Was continued in effect by Act of Congress as of...
As of...
Yeah, where's that? You got me lost.
Sorry. There we go. Act of Congress as of August 15th, 1848.
Oh, okay, yeah. And was ratified as part of the all laws in the force continued in force by Section 7, Article 18 of the Oregon Constitution of September 18, 1857. It had been decided that the common law of England is the common law. The common law of Oregon is the common law of England, modified and amended by English statutes as it existed at the time of the Revolution.
Exactly. So I'm going to say something here. You know, folks, when we pause like that, nobody knows all this off the top of their head. We've got notes in front of us, and sometimes the notes don't work the way we want to. So please bear with us when we do something like that. You know, we apologize.
So the state of Washington traces its common law to its code of 1881. And in fact, you cannot be a bar member or a lawyer in Washington unless you think you did 3 years of practicing common law. Enacting that the common law of England shall be the rule of decision. It is surmised that useful British statutes enacted prior to the Declaration of Independence, whenever found to be applicable to local conditions, will be deemed part of the common law
of the state of Washington.
Where am I at again?
You're up there at the top.
Oh, okay. This Idaho statute recognizes as part of its legal system the common law of England is similar to those of California and Nevada. Justice Galen, in the case of Gas Products Company versus Rankin, gives the following definition of common law. The common law has been a part of our system of jurisprudence from the organization of Montana Territory to the present day. The common law of England means that the body of jurisprudence as applied and modified by the courts of this country up to the time it became a rule of decision in this Commonwealth.
So, ladies and gentlemen, that's how it all applies. That's how this all flows together. You know, we are the descendants of the English colonies. We are the descendants of the crown properties. We have inherited the common law from England. We've inherited the statutes, the regulations. So Gary's got a couple of good books here.
Well, first let me say, remember, these lawyers all took an oath and joined this union of the Bar Association, which is the British Accreditation Registry. They're swearing an oath to the Crown. So, keep in memory, the common law of England is the law of this state of England and numerous states, and these attorneys and judges are all bar members, so they all work under the laws of England. So you should know your rights under the English Constitution and the English Bill of Rights.
As well as in the common law.
Because that's the law you got to use. They're going to tell you can't bring in the American Constitution into their courts or the American Bill of Rights, but you sure can bring the English version. So, with that in mind, you can get this book here. There's 4 different volumes. I got it on Amazon, and it will tell you all the different cases in there.
And again, it's not light reading, folks. We're not running a 100-level course here. We are upper division.
This is being self-taught. Now, you're not going to learn this in law school.
No, exactly not.
But you can learn this at home, and it has all the different cases in there. I got 4 volumes, and I also got another one now.
Heck, Gary, I have books like that, and I'll bring a couple of them in. They're my morning sit-down reading. You know, I'm not doing anything else. People play on the phone. Educate yourself when you have that morning sit-down.
Get the international law books and start reading international law. That also applies to this country. This is the book everybody needs. Black's Law Dictionary. I would recommend the 6th edition. She used the most.
Exactly. This is your guide to that foreign language of legalese.
It is a foreign language, even by the Association for People with Blindness or something like that.
Something like that, yeah.
Yeah. So you want to know this. Black's Law Dictionary. You get a subpoena, summons, look up every word and see what they're trying to tell you. It's all in code. So
if you don't know the meaning of the words, if you don't understand the language, they're going to run roughshod over you. They're going to own you. Well, they already do think they own you.
So you want to take the time to read. I do what he does. Usually I got my international law books there, and I keep a highlighter with me. So when I go through the books and I see something I want to retain, I highlight it with yellow. And then it's easy to reference when I come back to it. I even do the pages, numbers on it.
Absolutely. It's important to learn and to educate yourself because no one else is going to do it for you. The corporate schools certainly aren't. They're propaganda machines. They're intended to indoctrinate you and indoctrinate your children. They're acting as a nanny state. Heck, they're invading your homes now with webcams and surveillance. They're a nanny. They are there to indoctrinate you. You're not going to learn this in high school. You're not going to learn this in college. Those are all means of indoctrination.
There's no good American news system out there. They're all propaganda. Now, I watch CGTN, China's Global Television Network, and I also watch RT Times, Russian. But you got to watch those too. But you get more information, true information from those sites than you do from the government. Now, one of the sites I used to really enjoy was one of the German news, but I don't get this when I switched over to cable companies. But I used to watch German television all the time, English version.
Yeah, I hate to say it, one of the ones I find gives accurate reporting of facts a lot of times is Al Jazeera.
Oh, I used to watch them a lot. That was some also good stuff. But it's just like anything else. You got to figure out what's true and what's a false deal.
Exactly. You need to filter. You need to filter the propaganda
But you'll get more news in those other sites than you will here in America.
Well, because the American news is entertainment. And I'll pick out even some of the other folks here not on our radio station, but across the nation in radio. They're entertainers. They don't believe any of the stuff they're telling you. And I'm not going to name names because a lot of them are very popular, and I'd hate for them to come down here and, send their goons to beat me up or something for the folks in Rio Linda.
Oh, and since this is laying here, I'll just show you this. There's our bumper sticker. We got to redo it because we made a mistake and we did it all in capital letters.
Exactly.
The only thing should be capital is the first letter.
We don't want it to be corporate. We don't want it to be a corporate name here.
This is part of the learning curve. So this was our first print. And for you ones that lived in the Midwest, you'll know what this top color, magenta, is. What it means. Now in the Midwest, that means no trespassing, no hunting. That's why it's on our bumper stickers, and we also had license plates that you could hang on your chain link fencing that said private property, no trespass.
Exactly. The magenta, even just a magenta post, a magenta ribbon around the post, means that's the property line, go no further.
But being you're using a common law private membership association sign, it even means more. They definitely had no authority because you belong to a private association under common law. It takes you out of their corporate realm. So keep that in mind. We're going to be revising this stuff. We just had other things. It takes a lot of time to research. Now that we're back to 2 shows and that way we're doing, it takes a lot of time.
Absolutely. And actually, I want to throw out a question to you, Mr. and Mrs. America, and hit me up on the YouTube on this and let me know if you'd be interested. We talk about the what and the why on our 2 shows. Would anybody be interested in a show about how to break away from the corporation, how to start, because we talked about wanting to educate on that side of things too. Would you be interested? I'm not going to put a show out there that nobody's going to listen to. I hate my voice. I don't like hearing myself talk. But if it's valuable to you, Mr. and Mrs. America, let me know. If I get enough of you, we'll make it happen.
And don't forget, when we get back to the studio, we'll have the phone number again, which would be 775-990-4900, and we hope that you'll call in. But we're hoping to get that on some sort of conference call set up so we can run
actually
more.
Have more than one of you at a time.
Yes, right. Right now we're working with the producer, Frank, and he's a little stubborn-headed, but
Well,
hopefully he'll do it.
the other important things is follow us on Twitter at 98.1 Prevent Freedom Radio. Get out there and follow us on Facebook. Again, 98.1 Prevent Freedom Radio. Or email us at 98.1 PreventFreedomRadio at gmail.com. Again, 98.1 Prevent Freedom Radio at gmail.com. And we're going to try to get a shorter address here soon enough for the Nevada.
So that'll take you to YouTube. We're on YouTube.
Yep, we're on YouTube. We're on Facebook. We're on Twitter. We're out there. We're trying to get content out to everybody as much as we can.
And we're trying to build this network up with other low-power stations out there to spread the word.
Absolutely.
So if you're a low-power station, you want to get involved with this, let us know so you can spread the word and put our shows on your stations. It'd be very good.
Absolutely. So I want to thank you for watching. I want to thank you, Mr. and Mrs. America, for following us here.
Oh, one more thing about Mr. and Mrs. America.
Yes, sir.
Step up. Volunteer.
Absolutely.
For the grand jury.
Hang on. We need 22 more of you out here to form a grand jury in the county of Nye.
And we need you in this common law private membership association so we can form our county assemblies.
And our courts.
That's right. Remember, we have a court charter.
We do. We are the de jure court, and the de facto court cannot operate in the presence of the de jure court.
Oh, wrong one. This one. Oh, wrong finger.
There you go.
This finger.
Which finger, Gary?
That's the common law logo.
Absolutely.
We're an international court from Brussels, Belgium.
Absolutely. We're a recognized court. So, ladies and gentlemen, again, I want to thank you. I'm Michael Runion.
And I'm Gary Bergman.
This was the Keeping the Republic Just.
Thank you for joining us.
See you next week.
Bye.